midnight, and the scent of sandalwood. The first thing I noticed was not the betrayal. It was the silence. At 11:40-7 on a Tuesday night in late October, the penthouse on the 40-2nd floor of the Meridian Hours went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with the city below. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, leaving the floor minus to minus, ceiling windows streaked and weeping. The grandfather clock in the foyer ticked with the patience of something that had already decided how this story would end. I was 4 months pregnant, and I could not sleep. My husband, Lu Yang, was working late. Again, he had been working late for the better part of 3 months, and each time he came home, he smelled of something that was not his cologne and not the office-a cheap, sweet rose perfume that clung to his collar like a confession. He thought I was too stupid to read. My mother Midas Law had brought me a glass of warm bird's nest soup at 11:30. She had patted my hand with a kind of tenderness that made my skin crawl, even before I knew why. Suhi, she had whispered, her voice thick with maternal devotion. The baby needs you to be happy. She had closed the door behind her with a soft, deliberate click. I waited exactly 10 minutes. I counted them on the clock, the same clock that had been a wedding gift from my father. The man who had built Suhi Court from a single import-export desk into a holding company with interests across 3 continents. My father had died 18 months ago, leaving me the controlling share of the company and a trust fund that made me, on paper, one of the wealthiest women under 30-5 in the city. He had also left me a warning, delivered over tea 3 weeks before the heart attack that killed him. Suhi, love is a currency. Spend it wisely, and never let anyone tell you they love you while their hands are in your purse. I had laughed. I had been 20-9 in love, had convinced that my marriage to Lu Yang was the one thing in my life that did not need auditing. I was not laughing now. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up. The marble floor was cold against the soles of my feet, and I padded across the bedroom to the mahogany desk where my laptop sat closed. I opened it. The screen flared to life, casting a pale blue glow across the room. I did not open my work email. I did not check the merger documents that had been consuming my days. I opened a different application, a clean, minimalist interface that displayed for live video feeds in a grid. 3 days earlier, I had hired a technician to install hidden cameras in the penthouse, not in the living room where anyone might think to look, not in the master bedroom where Lu Yang might notice a new device. In the nursery, the room we had just finished decorating, the room with the pale yellow walls and the white crib and the tiny blue shoes I had bought on a whim during a lunch break, the room that was supposed to be where our child took their first breaths. I had told myself, when I installed them, that I was being paranoid, that the perfume on Lu Yang's collar was nothing, that Chu Kin's sudden, suffocating devotion was just a mother Midas Law excited about her first grandchild, that the dizzy spells I had been experiencing for the past month were just normal pregnancy fatigue. The camera feed proved me wrong on every count. The first 3 feeds were dark, empty rooms, still furniture, the ordinary silence of a house asleep. The 4th feed, the nursery, was not dark. The light was on. Chu Kin was sitting in the rocking chair. I had chosen a cream-colored upholstered chair with a matching ottoman, and she was holding a phone to her ear. In her other hand, In her other hand, she held the tiny blue shoes. She was turning them over and over, her thumb brushing the soft leather, and her face was lit by the phone screen in a way that made her look younger, almost girlish. I turned up the volume, checked her schedule. Ju Pin was saying, and her voice was dripping with a sweetness I had never heard her use with me. It was the voice of a woman talking to someone she genuinely liked, someone she considered family. She has a board meeting tomorrow. Liu Yang will pick you up at 2. I'll have the guest room ready. You're the one carrying the true heir to the Liu family, not that workaholic machine. I felt my stomach drop, not from the pregnancy, from the words. That workaholic machine. She was talking about me. A younger voice responded high. The kind of voice that belonged to a woman who had never had to work for anything in her life. But Auntie, what if he finds out about the inheritance? My lawyer says if she miscarries, the trust fund from her father stays with Liu Yang. Miscarries. The word hung in the air between us. Between the woman in the nursery and the woman in the bedroom, separated by 2 floors and a lifetime of deception. Zhu Kai laughed. It was a cold, dry sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. Miscarry? Huh. Why do you think I give her that calming incense every night? A little more stress, a little accidental fall. Nature will take its course. Once she's out of the picture, you and your baby are coming home. I did not cry. I want to say that I did, that I broke down, that the woman I had called Mom for 7 years had just confessed to plotting my unborn child's death, and I collapsed into a heap of grief and tears, but I did not. Somewhere in the 7 years of being Mrs. Liu Yang, in the boardrooms where men twice my age tried to talk over me, in the hospital room where I held my father's hand while he died, I had learned something essential. Tears are a luxury you cannot afford when the enemy is still in the house. I looked at the glass of bird's nest soup on the nightstand. It was still warm, a faint steam curling from the surface. Shu Qin had made it herself. She had stood in my kitchen in my penthouse, and stirred it with a spoon, and smiled while she did it. I picked up the glass. I walked to the bathroom. I poured it down the drain. The soup swirled and vanished, and I watched it go, and I thought, you want a performance? I'll give you a masterpiece. I went back to the bedroom. I closed the laptop. I got back into bed. I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the house, the clock ticked. And in the nursery, Zhu Qing was still talking, still planning, still believing that I was asleep and unaware and already, in her mind, as good as gone. She was wrong about all 3. To understand what happened next, you have to understand who I was before I became Mrs. Liu Yang. I was born Su He, the only child of Su Wen, a man who started with nothing and built an empire. My mother died when I was 6 complications from a surgery that should have been routine, and my father raised me alone. He did not remarry. He did not date. He poured everything he had into 2 things: his company and me. I was not a spoiled child. My father made sure of that. By the time I was 12, I was spending Saturdays in his office, reading balance sheets for fun. By 16, I had my own small investment portfolio, managed with my father's guidance, but with my own decisions. By 20-2, I had an MBA from Wharton and a seat on the board of Suhi Corp. I was, by any reasonable measure, a success. I was also, by any reasonable measure, lonely. My father's world was a world of men, older men, wealthy men. Men who saw me as either a threat or a prize and rarely as a person. I had friends, of course. I had colleagues. But the kind of intimacy that comes from being seen, truly seen, by someone who wants nothing from you, that I did not have. And then I met Liu Yang. We met at a charity gala, one of those black minus tie affairs, where the city's elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their generosity while drinking champagne that costs more than most people's monthly rent. I was there representing Suhi Corp. Liu Yang was there representing his family's construction firm, a mid-year company that had been struggling and was looking for investors. He was handsome. I will give him that. Tall, with dark hair and a jawline that could have been sculpted, and a smile that was warm without being aggressive. He approached me not with a pitch, but with a question. You look bored. Want to get out of here? I was surprised. Most men at these events approached me with an agenda. Liu Yang approached me with an invitation. We left the gala. We walked along the river. He bought me a hot dog from a street vendor, an absurd thing for a woman in a $5,000 gown to be eating, and I loved every bite of it. He told me about his family, about his father who had built the construction company from nothing, and then Len lost his health trying to keep it afloat. About his mother Zhukin, who had been a school teacher before she married and who still, Liu Yang said, believed in the old Midas fashion things. Family, respect, a woman's place in the home. I should have heard the warning in that last part. I did not. I was 20-6, and I was tired of being the smart one, the strong one, the one who never needed anything. Liu Yang made me feel like I could be soft, like I could let someone else carry the weight for a while. We dated for 8 months. He was attentive. He remembered my coffee order. He sent flowers to my office on random Tuesdays. He met my father, and my father, who was not an easy man to impress, seemed to like him. He's ambitious, my father said after Liu Yang had left. Ambition is good, as long as it's honest. I should have asked what he meant by that. I did not. We were married in the spring, in a ceremony that was covered by 3 society magazines. Zhukin cried during the vows. She hugged me afterward and whispered, "Welcome to the family, daughter." I believed her. The first year of marriage was good. Liu Yang's construction firm got a major contract through Suhi Corp's connections. Though I never said so, and his fortunes improved. We bought the penthouse. We traveled. We were, by all appearances, the perfect couple. The second year was harder. Liu Yang started working late. He started taking business trips that I was not invited on. He started checking his phone when he thought I was not looking. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was the pressure of running a growing company. I told myself a lot of things. Zhukin moved in during the 3rd year. She said her health was declining. Her unease, her blood pressure, a dozen minor ailments that she described in vivid, theatrical detail, and that she needed someone to look after her. Liu Yang agreed before I could object. "She's my mother," he said, as if that settled it. "She belongs with family." Zhukin moved into the west wing of the penthouse, and from that day forward, the house was never quite mine again. She was everywhere. She was in the kitchen when I woke up, making breakfast. She was in the living room when I came home, watching her soap operas. She was in my bedroom, tiddying up. She asked about my schedule, my meetings, my travel plans, with the kind of casual interest that I mistook for concern. I did not know then that she was reporting everything to Liu Yang, that she was his spy, his inside woman, his eyes and ears in the home I paid for. I did not know that every time I mentioned a business trip, a meeting, a potential deal, Shu Qin was texting Liu Yang within the hour. I did not know a lot of things. The pregnancy came in the 4th year. It was not planned. Exactly. But it was not unwelcome either. Liu Yang had been talking about children for months. We need an heir, he said, half-minded joking, and I had laughed, though there was something in his tone that made me uncomfortable. When the test came back positive, he was thrilled. He hugged me. He called his mother. He celebrated with a bottle of champagne that I could not drink. Shu Kind was even more thrilled. She started burning sandalwood incense in my bedroom every night, saying it calmed the nerves and promoted a healthy pregnancy. She started touching my belly, talking to the baby in a high, cooing voice that I found inexplicably unsettling. I told myself it was cultural. I told myself it was her way of showing love. I told myself I was being ungrateful. And then came the dizzy spells. The first one was mild a moment of lightheadedness while I was standing at the kitchen counter, a brief swim in my vision that passed in seconds. The second one was worst. I was in a meeting and I had to sit down, my hands shaking, my heart racing. The third one landed me in the emergency room where the doctors ran tests and found nothing wrong. Stress, they said. Normal pregnancy fatigue. Rest more. Shu Qin nodded sagely. I told you she was working too hard, she said to Liu Yang, in front of me, as if I were not in the room. She needs to step back from the company. For the baby. I should have connected the dots then. The incense. The soup. The dizzy spells. Zhu Qin's sudden urgency about me stepping away from the company. But I did not. I was tired. And I was pregnant. And I wanted to believe that the woman who called me daughter was on my side. It was not until I found the perfume on Liu Yang's collar, the cheap rose perfume, the kind that a woman like Lin you would wear, that I started to wonder. And it was not until I installed the cameras that I knew. The next morning, I was the perfect daughter minus law. I got up at 6:30, an hour earlier than usual, and went to the kitchen. Shu Qin was already there. Of course, she was always already there, wearing a silk house dress and slippers. She turned the pot of coffee on the stove. She turned when she heard me, and her face broke into a smile that was so warm, so genuine, that for half a second I almost believed it. Suhi, you're up early. Are you feeling all right? Dear, you should be resting. I'm fine, Mom, I said, and my voice was light, easy, the voice of a woman who had not spent the night watching her other minus law plot her unborn child's death. I couldn't sleep. Thought I'd make some tea. Let me, Shu Qin said, already moving toward the tea cabinet. You said, you're carrying my grandchild. You shouldn't be on your feet. I sat. I watched her move around the kitchen, efficient, practiced, the movements of a woman who had spent decades making herself indispensable. She brewed the tea. She brought it to me in a delicate porcelain cup. She sat across from me, unfolded her hands on the table. Liu Yang left early, she said. Big meeting. He didn't want to wake you. I knew that was a lie. I had heard the shower start at 5:40-5, had heard him dress, had smelled the rose perfume when he leaned over the bed to kiss my forehead. His lips had brushed my skin. and I had kept my eyes closed. And I had thought you were kissing me with the mouth that kissed her last night. That's nice of him, I said. I sipped the tea. It was jasmine. Shuken always remembered my favorite tea. That was the thing about her, she was meticulous. She remembered everything. Birthdays, anniversaries, preferences. She used that information to make you feel loved. She also used it to make you feel trapped. I'll be home late today. Mom, I said, the merger is taking a lot out of me. Back minus to minus back meetings. Shu Kin's smile widened, just slightly. I saw it the micro minus expression, 路遥的短篇小说. The flicker of triumph that she thought I was too oblivious to catch. Oh, you poor thing, she said, hiding her smirk behind her old teacup. Go, work hard. I'll take care of the house. I finished my tea. I stood up. I kissed her on the cheek. Her skin was soft, and I felt the same surge of nausea that I had felt the night before, but I did not let it show. Thank you. Thank you. You're the best. I left the penthouse at 7:40-5. I took the elevator down to the parking garage. I got into my car, a black sedan, discreet. The kind of car that a CEO drives when she does not want to draw attention. I pulled out of the garage, and I did not go to the office. I went to see a private investigator. His name was Chen Wei, and he operated out of a third minus floor, walk minus up in a neighborhood that was not quite gentrified and not quite dangerous. I had found him through a contact at the firm lawyer who had used him for divorce cases and who had described him as expensive, thorough. Those were the three qualities I needed most. The office was small and cluttered, file cabinets stacked against the walls, a desk buried under paperwork, a coffee maker that looked older than I was. Chen Wei himself was in his 50s, with gray hair, cut shortened eyes that missed nothing. He did not offer me coffee. He did not make small talk. He sat down behind his desk, looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Your husband." It was not a question. My husband, I conferred. And my mother minus in Midas law, and a woman named Lin Yu. I told him everything. The perfume, the incense, the dizzy spells, the cameras. The conversation I had recorded Jukin's voice, clear as a bell, talking about nature taking its course and once she's out of the picture. I played the recording for him. He listened without expression, his fingers steep lead on the desk. When the recording ended, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You want proof?" "I want everything." I said, "Bank records, phone records, surveillance. I want to know every penny they've spent, every lie they've told, every place they've been. I want to know the full extent of it before I move." Chen Wei nodded. "That's going to take time. And money. I have both." He looked at me again this time with something that might have been respect. "All right. Give me a week, maybe 10 days. I'll have something for you." I left his office at 9:30. I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing. The city moved around me, cars honking, pedestrians rushing. The ordinary chaos of a Tuesday morning, and I felt apart from it, as if I were watching my own life from behind a pane of glass. I thought about my father. I thought about his warning, never let anyone tell you they love you while their hands are in your purse. I thought about how I had laughed, how I had been so sure that Lu Yang was different. I thought about the baby for months. The size of an avocado, according to the pregnancy app on my phone. I put my hand on my stomach, and I felt a faint flutter, the first movements, The ones that the books say feel like butterflies or gas, but that feel, in that moment, like a promise. I am going to protect you, I thought. Whatever it takes. I started the car. I drove to the office. I spent the rest of the day in meetings. Merger negotiations, board presentations, the ordinary machinery of running a company, and no one who saw me that day would have guessed that my personal life was collapsing. I was professional. I was, as always, in control. But underneath, something had shifted. The woman who walked into that office on Tuesday morning was not the same woman who had walked out of the penthouse. The old Sue, the one who had wanted to be soft, who had wanted to be loved, who had wanted to believe the best of the people around her. In her place was something harder, something colder, something that did not flinch from the truth. The hunter had woken up, and the prey did not even know the hunt had begun. Chen Wei called me 9 days later. It's worse than you thought, he said, without preamble. Can you come in? I told him I would be there in an hour. I told my assistant I was taking a personal day. I drove to his office, and when I walked in, he was standing by the window, holding a manila envelope that looked thick enough to be a book. He did not offer me a seat. He handed me the envelope. Start with the photos. I sat down. I opened the envelope. The first thing that fell out was a stack of photographs, glossy, for minus by -6. The kind that you hold in your hand and feel the weight of. The first photo was Yu Qin, standing in the lobby of a private obstetrics clinic, holding the arm of a younger woman. The younger woman was pretty in a generic way, long dark hair, expensive looking coat, a face that had been enhanced by just enough cosmetic surgery to look polished without looking artificial. She was visibly pregnant, maybe 5 or 6 months along. Ju Qin had her hand on the woman's elbow, guiding her through the door, and her expression was one of pure, unadulterated pride. Lin Yu, 20-8, former receptionist at Lu Yang's company. They've been involved for approximately 14 months. I looked at the next photo. It was the same clinic, same 2 women, but this time, Xiu Qin was at the reception desk. The camera angle was good, you could see the form clearly, and you could see what Yu Qin had written in the relationship to patient feel. Grandmother. I felt my jaw tighten. She signed as the grandmother. She did. She's been taking Lin Yu to every prenatal appointment. She pays with your VIP medical card, the one linked to your corporate account. She's been using it for Lin Yu's appointments, her vitamins, even a private ultrasound package that costs $12,000. I set the photo down. I picked up the next one. This one was Lu Yang. He was standing in a jewelry store, at a glass counter, and a saleswoman was showing him a diamond bracelet. The bracelet was large, ostentatious, the kind of piece that a man buys for a woman he is trying to impress, not the kind he buys for his wife. The timestamp on the photo was from 3 weeks earlier, the same week I had been in the hospital for a minor pregnancy complication, a subchorionic hematoma that had the doctors warning me to take it easy. I had been in a hospital bed, bleeding, terrified that I was losing the baby, and Lu Yang had been buying diamond bracelets for his mistress. He spent 40-8,000 on that bracelet, Chen Wei said, with a corporate card, your corporate card. I did not say anything. I kept looking at the photos. There were Lu Yang and Lin Yu at a restaurant, holding hands across the table. Lin Yu getting out of Lu Yang's car in front of an apartment building. Xiu Kai and Lin Yu at a cafe. laughing over Lance. A photo of Lin, you holding a shopping bag from a luxury maternity boutique, with Zhu Kaid, her, carrying 3 more. Each photo was a small. Not the kind of pain that makes you cry, the kind that makes you cold. The kind that hardens something inside you until it is unbreakable. The financials are worse, Chen Wei said. He pulled a folder from the envelope and handed it to me. Lu Yang has been diverting funds from Suhi Corp's operating accounts into a shell company registered in Lin Yu's name. The shell company is called Yu Consulting. It has no employees, no office, no actual business. It exists solely to receive transfers. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary, clean, organized, the kind of document that Chen Wei clearly took pride in. It listed every transfer, every date, every amount, total diverted for $0.2 million. I read the number twice. For $0.2 million. That was not petty cash. That was not a mistress's allowance. That was embezzlement on a scale that could, if prosecuted, put Lu Yang in prison for a very long time. He's been doing this for 8 months. Shen Wei said. Small amounts at first, 50,000 here, 100,000 there. Then it got bigger. Last month, he transferred 850,000 in a single transaction. He's getting bolder. Because he thinks I'm going to miscarry, I said. It was not a question. Chen Wei looked at me. The incense, you had it tested. Not yet. I wanted your findings first. I sent a sample to a lab friend of mine, runs a toxicology testing service. Got the results back yesterday. He pulled another sheet of paper from the envelope and handed it to me. The Sandalwood incense your mother minus in minus law has been burning in your bedroom. It's not sandalwood. It's a blend of herbs, mugwort, safflower, tansy, all of which are known to stimulate uterine contractions. In high enough concentrations, over a long enough period, they can induce miscarriage. The lab said it's the kind of blend that traditional medicine practitioners use for other purposes. Let's just say it's not something you give to a pregnant woman. I read the lab report. The words were clinical, precise, and horrifying. Safflower, tansy, uterine contractions, miscarriage. Zhu Qin had been burning this in my bedroom every night for 2 months. She had been standing over me smiling, telling me to rest, while the air I breathed was slowly poisoning my child. The dizzy spells, I said. Early symptom. The lab said prolonged exposure causes lightheadedness, nausea, increased heart rate, exactly what you've been experiencing. I set the lab report down. I looked at Chen Wei. Is there permanent damage to the baby? The lab can't say for sure without fetal testing. But you said you've been having regular prenatal appointments, and everything looked normal. Yes. Then the baby is probably fine. The concentrations are low enough that it would take sustained, long minus-term exposure to cause a miscarriage. You caught it early. I nodded. I felt a wave of relief so intense that it made my hands shake. The baby was fine. My child was safe. For now. There's more, Chen Wei said. He hesitated, which was unlike him. The smart minus home system. You have one. The digital locks, the security system, all controlled through an app. Yes, Lu Yang set it up. Your mother minus in minus law has been sharing the digital key to your house with Lin Yu while you're at work. She uses your things. She wears your clothes. He stopped. You should see the photos. I did not want to see the photos, but I looked anyway. There was Lin Yu lying on my bed, wearing my silk robe cream minus colored, the one I had bought on our honeymoon in Paris. She was holding a glass of my wine a 2015 Bordeaux from the cellar that my father had curated. She was laughing. And behind her, Zhu Qin was holding up my dress, a black cocktail dress that I had worn to the company holiday party. And Lin Yu was reaching for it. Another photo, Lin Yu in my bathroom, standing in front of my vanity. She had on my engagement ring, the ring that Lu Yang had given me, the ring that my father had helped him pick out. She was holding her hand up, admiring it, and her expression was one of pure covetousness. Another photo. Lu Yang and Lin Yu on the sofa in the living room, the same sofa where I sat every night, alone, watching television while Lu Yang was working late. They were kissing. Lin Yu's hand was in his hair. Lu Yang's hand was on her waist. The photo was taken from the hallway, through the slightly open door, and the angle was such that you could see everything. Zhu Qin filmed them, Chen Wei said. She sent the videos to her friends, her golden lady circle, as she calls it. She was bragging about her real daughter minus in minus law. I got screenshots of the group chat. He handed me the last document in the envelope. It was a series of screenshots, WeChat messages, time-stamped from a group chat with 12 members. The messages were in Chinese, but I did not need a translation. I could read the tone. Zhu Qin, my real daughter minus in minus law, is pregnant. The other one is just a walking ATM. Zhu Qin, once the brat is born, will kick her to the curb. Lin Yu is much more obedient. Friend 1, you're so lucky, Qin. 2 daughters minus in minus law. Zhu Qin, the smart one, knows her place. The workaholic will be gone soon. Friend 2, what about the trust fund? Zhu Qin, nature will take its course. The baby won't survive the stress. Then everything goes to Lu Yang. I read the messages. I read them again. I felt something inside me shift, not break, but rearrange. The last remaining piece of the old Sue, the part that had wanted to believe, that had held out hope that maybe Zhu Qin had been manipulated. That maybe Lu Yang still loved me. That maybe this was all some terrible misunderstanding, that peace died. It did not die screaming. It died quietly, the way a candle goes out when you snuff it between your fingers. There was a moment of smoke. It did not die screaming. And then nothing. I looked up at Chen Wei. How much do I owe you? 20,000. Expenses included. I'll transfer it today. I stood up. I gathered the photos, the financial reports, the lab results, the screenshots. I put them back in the manila envelope. I held it against my chest, the way you hold something precious, something you cannot bear to lose. So Chen Wei said, I stopped at the door. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal. I looked at him. Everything I do will be legal. They're the ones who broke the law. He nodded. He did not say anything else. I left his office. I got into my car. I sat there for a long time, holding the envelope, staring at the steering wheel. And then I called my lawyer. David Marsh was the kind of lawyer that people described as a shark, which was a compliment in his profession. He was in his late 40s, with silver hair and a wardrobe that cost more than most people's cars, and he had been my father's lawyer before he was mine. He knew the family trust inside and out. He knew Suhi Corp's corporate structure. He knew, perhaps better than anyone, Exactly how much power, I hadn't exactly how to use it. I met him at his office at 2 o'clock. His office was on the 30-seat floor of a glassed tower downtown, with a view of the river that was almost as good as the one from my penthouse. He offered me coffee black, no sugar. The way I liked Titten sat down behind his desk, steepling his fingers. "You look like you've been through hell," he said. "I have been, but I'm out the other side." I set the manila envelope on his desk. "I need you to read this. All of it. And then I need you to tell me what my options are." He read it. He was a slow, thorough reader, the kind who turned each page carefully, who made notes in the margins, who did not skip anything. When he finished, he set the envelope down and looked at me for a long time. "Your husband has been embezzling from your company," he said. "Your mother-in law has been attempting to induce a miscarriage. And the mistress is pregnant and living in your house while you're at work. That about covers it." David was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, Sue," he, "truly. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for a strategy." He nodded. He pulled a legal pad toward him and picked up a pen. "All right, let's talk about what we can do. First, your father's trust fund, it's structured so that the principal remains yours, separate from marital assets. In the event of divorce, correct? The trust is irrevocable. The principal can't be touched by anyone but me. The income is distributed to me annually. That's your firewall. Liu Yang can't get to the principal, but he can get to the income if you're still married. The income is considered marital property. If you divorce, he could claim half. I'm aware. So the first step is to freeze the trust. Not the principal that's already protected, but we can petition the court to freeze the income distribution pending the divorce. That cuts off Liu Yang's access to the money. How long does that take? A week, maybe 2, if we file an emergency motion. We can argue that he's a flight risk and that he's already demonstrated a pattern of financial misconduct. The embezzlement helps us here. Second, the corporate funds. The $4.2 million that Liu Yang diverted to Lin Yu's shell company. We can file a civil suit to recover the funds both from Liu Yang and from Lin Yu, since she's the recipient. We can also refer the matter to the authorities for criminal prosecution. Embezzlement of that scale is a felony. He's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. I felt a flicker of something, not satisfaction, exactly, but something close to it. Do it. Both the civil suit and the criminal referral. David paused. "So are you sure? Once we go criminal, there's no turning back. He'll be arrested. He'll have a record. He'll go to prison." "I'm sure." He nodded. He wrote something on the legal pad. Third, the incense. The toxicology report. This is attempted harm to a pregnant woman. Depending on the jurisdiction, that's aggravated assault or attempted feticide. We can press criminal charges against you kind. She's looking at serious time. Each time is serious time. 3 to 5 years, maybe more, given the premeditation. Do it. Fourth, the divorce itself. We file for divorce on the grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. We seek full custody of the child. We seek a division of marital assets that favors you, given his conduct. And we seek a restraining order preventing both Liu Yang and Zhu Qing from contacting you or coming within 500 feet of you. All of it. David set down his pen. He looked at me. "There's one more thing. The house. The penthouse. It's in both your names, right? We bought it together after we got married. If we freeze the trust and file for divorce, Liu Yang could fight for the house. He could try to force a sale. He could try to stay in it. I don't want the house. David blinked. You don't. It's tainted. Every room in that house has been touched by them. The bedroom where he slept with her. The nursery where my mother minus law plotted my child's death. The sofa where they kissed while I was at work. I don't want any of it. I want them to lose it. I want its old, and the proceeds divided according to the court's judgment. I want them to walk away with nothing. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know, most people in your position want the house. They want to keep the home, the stability, the familiar things. I'm not most people. And that house was never a home. It was a stage, and the play is over. He nodded slowly. All right. I'll draw up the papers. We'll file the emergency motion to freeze the trust tomorrow. The civil suit and criminal referrals by the end of the week. The divorce petition early next week. Not yet. He stopped. Don't file anything yet. He stared at me. Suhee, I don't understand. You just told me to do all of this. And now you're saying wait. I'm saying wait. I have a plan, and the plan requires that Liu Yang Donzhou can know that I know. Not yet. If we file now, they'll find out. They'll lawyer up. They'll destroy evidence. They'll run. Run where? Anywhere. Lin Yu has a passport. Liu Yang has access to funds. Even if we freeze the trust, he's got the 2 million in Lin Yu's account. They could leave the country. And then I spend the next 5 years fighting extradition. David considered this. So what's the plan? I leaned forward. I told him about the birthday banquet. Zhu Qin's 60th birthday was in 3 weeks. I had already mentioned casually that I wanted to throw her a party, a big one. The kind that the society pages would write about. Zhu Qin had been thrilled. She had already started talking about the guest list, the menu, the dress she would wear. I want to use the banquet, I said. I want to invite everyone. Their friends, their colleagues, their social circle. I want to invite Lin Yu's parents. And I want to expose everything there, publicly, in front of everyone they know. David was quiet. Then he said, That's dramatic. It's necessary. Zhu Qin cares about one thing more than anything, her reputation, her place in the Golden Lady's circle, her status as a respected matriarch. If I expose her privately, she can deny it. She can spin it. She can tell her friends that I'm crazy, that I'm a jealous wife, that I made it all up. But if I expose her in front of 200 people with evidence, with recordings, with photos, she can't deny it. She can't spin it. Her reputation is gone. And that's the thing that will destroy her more than any prison sentence. And Liu Yang cares about status. About being seen as a successful businessman, a good husband, a pillar of the community. If I expose him in front of his colleagues, his investors, his friends, his status is gone, and the police will be there. I want them arrested at the banquet, in front of everyone. David was staring at me. You want the police to arrest them at the birthday party? I do. I want it to be a spectacle. I want it to be unforgettable. I want every person in that room to leave knowing exactly what kind of people Liu Yang and Zhu Qin to know for the rest of their lives. That the moment everything fell apart was the moment they thought they had won. David was quiet for a long time. Then he said, It's aggressive. It's risky. If anything goes wrong, if they find out, if the evidence leaks, if the police don't cooperate, you could lose everything. I've already lost everything. The marriage, the trust, the family I thought I had. The only thing I have left is the truth, and I'm going to use it like a weapon." He nodded. He picked up his pen again. "All right, here's what we do. We don't file anything yet. We prepare everything: the trust freeze, the civil suit, the criminal referrals, the divorce papers. We have them ready to go. We coordinate with the police, so there's no paper trail. We get them to agree to be at the banquet, to make the arrests after the evidence is presented. And on the day of the banquet, we file everything simultaneously: the trust freeze, the civil suit, the criminal complaints, the divorce. By the time Lu Yangganju can leave that banquet, they'll be under arrest. Their assets will be frozen, and the divorce will be in motion." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "That's exactly what I want." "One more thing," David said. "The baby. You're 4 months pregnant. The stress of this: planning a public takedown of your husband and mother, minus law, coordinating with police, preparing for a divorce. It could be dangerous. You need to take care of yourself." I am taking care of myself. This is how I take care of myself: by making sure that the people who tried to hurt my child can never hurt anyone again. He did not argue. We spent the next 2 hours going over the details: the timeline, the evidence, the logistics. David made calls to his partner, to a contact in the police department, to a forensic accountant. I sat there, watching him work, and I felt a sense of calm that I had not felt in months. The plan was in motion. The clock was ticking. And Lu Yangganju Kin had no idea. For the next 2 weeks, I played a role. It was not a difficult role. I had been playing a version of it for years: the devoted wife, the obedient daughter, minus law. The woman who was grateful for the love of her husband and his family. But now the role had a new dimension. I was frail. I was exhausted. I was, as Yu Pin would have put it, not quite herself. I started with the small things. I began forgetting things: appointments, names, where I had put my keys. I would stand in the middle of the kitchen, staring into the refrigerator, and say, "What was I looking for?" I would ask Xu Qin the same question twice in one conversation, and then apologize, laughing weakly, and say, "I'm sorry, Mom, pregnancy brain." She ate it up. I started complaining about dizziness. Every morning, I would sit at the breakfast table, holding my head, then say, "I feel so lightheaded. Must be the low blood pressure." Xu Qin would nod. Can say, "You're working too hard, dear. You need to rest." I would sigh and say, "I know, but the company." And she would cut me off, saying, "The company can wait. The baby can't." I started having memory gaps. I would tell Xu Qin about a conversation that had never happened: a meeting, a phone call, a doctor's appointment, and then, an hour later, I would say, "Did I already tell you that?" "I can't remember." I would look confused, frightened even, and Xu Qin would pat my hand and say, "It's all right, dear. The pregnancy is hard on you. Maybe you should step back from the company. Let Lu Yang handle things for a while." That was the line I was waiting for. "Maybe you're right." "Mom," I whispered, looking down at my hands. "I'm so tired. I don't know how much longer I can keep going." Xu Qin's smile was radiant. It was the smile of a woman who was watching her plan come to fruition, who was seeing the incense work, who was counting the days until I was out of the picture and Lin Yu was in. Of course I'm right, dear. You just focus on the baby. Liu Yang and I will take care of everything else. I let her believe it. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was anything but frail. I met with David twice more. We finalized the trust freeze documents. We coordinated with the police. Detective Sarah Lynn, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who specialized in white-collar crime and who had, after reviewing the evidence, agreed to be at the banquet with 2 uniformed officers. We hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny of the $4.2 million. We prepared the evidence package, the photos, the financial records, the lab report, the group chat screenshots, the audio recording from the nursery. I also started planning the banquet. It was going to be held at the Grand Ballroom of the Meridian Hotel, the same hotel where Liu Yang and I had held our wedding reception. I thought there was a certain poetry in that. The same room where I had celebrated my marriage would be the room where I destroyed it. I hired an event planner, woman named Claire, who was expensive and meticulous and who asked no questions when I told her I wanted the banquet to be unforgettable. I booked the caterer. I arranged for the flowers, white roses, Zhu Qin's favorite. I ordered a KK 3- vanilla cake with buttery creme frosting, decorated with edible gold leaf. I arranged for a string quartet. I arranged for a photographer. And I arranged for a projector and a large screen, positioned at the front of the ballroom where everyone could see it. The guest list was my masterpiece. I invited everyone. The city's business elite CIOs, investors, board members, Liu Yang's colleagues, his partners at the construction firm, his employees, his clients. Zhu Qin's golden ladies circle, all 12 of them, the wealthy socialites who valued reputation above all else and who would, I knew, spread the story of the banquet to every corner of the city's upper class. I invited Liu Yang's father, Zhu Qin's husband, a quiet, gentle man named Liu Jian, who had been in poor health for years and who spent most of his time in the countryside. I invited him because I wanted him to see what his wife and son had done. I invited him because I wanted him to know that I was not the villain, and I invited Lin Yu's parents. They were retired school teachers, decent, hardworking people who lived in a modest apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. They believed their daughter was working as a high-level consultant for Liu Yang's company. They believed she was successful, independent, unmarried. They had no idea that their daughter was the mistress of a married man, that she was pregnant with his child, that she was living in my house and wearing my clothes and spending my money. I invited them because I wanted them to see the truth. I wanted them to see what their daughter had become. And I wanted Lin Yu to see her parents' faces when they found out. I sent the invitations out 10 days before the banquet. They were elegant cream-colored cardstock, gold foil lettering, hand-addressed. Zhu Qin helped me with the envelopes. She was in a state of near-euphoria, chattering about who would be there, what she would wear, how this would be the social event of the season. "You're too good to me, Suhi." I invited them because I wanted them to see the truth. I wanted them to see what their daughter had become. And I wanted Lin Yu to see her parents' faces when they found out. I sent the invitations out 10 days before the banquet. They were elegant cream-colored cardstock, gold foil lettering, hand-addressed. Zhu Qin helped me with the envelopes. She was in a state of near-euphoria, chattering about who would be there, what she would wear, how this would be the social event of the season. "You're too good to me, Suhi," she said, sealing an envelope with a wax stamp. Most daughters in Midas law wouldn't bother. "But you're like a real daughter to me." I smiled at her. It was a warm, gentle smile, the smile of a woman who was grateful for her other Midas in Midas law's love. "You deserve it, Mom. 60 years is a milestone. We should celebrate." Inside, I was counting the days. The text message was the final piece. I had been tracking Lin Yu's phone number. Chen Wei had obtained it through a contact, and I had been sending her anonymous messages for a week. The messages were designed to appeal to her vanity, her ambition, her belief that she was about to become the new Mrs. Liu Yang. The first message: "He talks about you all the time. He says you're the one." The second: "He's planning something special. You'll be invited." The third: "The wife is losing it. She's forgetting things. She's weak. It's almost over." Each message was sent from a burner phone, cheap, disposable, impossible to trace. Lin Yu replied to everyone. She was eager, vain, and not nearly as clever as she thought she was. She told me about her pregnancy, about Liu Yang's promises, about how she couldn't wait to take her place. On the morning of the banquet, I sent the final message: "The stage is set. Wear the white dress. He wants you there." Lin Yu replied instantly, "I'll be there." It's time I took my place. I set the burner phone down. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a simple black dress, elegant, understated, the kind of dress that a grieving woman might wear, or a woman who was about to deliver a verdict. My hair was pulled back. My makeup was minimal. I looked calm. I looked controlled. I looked like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. I put my hand on my stomach. The baby moved a soft, deliberate kick, as if in agreement. "Yes," I whispered. "It's time." The clock had run out, and the performance was about to begin. I woke up at 5 o'clock on the day of the banquet. The penthouse was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm, the hush of a world holding its breath. I lay in bed for a moment. Somewhere down the hall, Zhu Qin's alarm clock was beeping softly. In the master bathroom, the faucet was dripping a slow, rhythmic sound that I had been meaning to fix for months and never had. I got up. I did not make the bed. I did not brush my hair. I went straight to the walk minus in closet and started packing. Not clothes. Not yet. First, the important things. The jewelry my father had left me, a jade pendant that had been his mother's, a pair of diamond earrings that he had given me for my 30th birthday, the watch that he had worn every day of his adult life, a gold Rolex with a scratched face and a leather band that was worn thin. These were not things that Liu Yang could take. They were not things that could be divided in a divorce. They were mine, and they were going with me. I packed them in a small, nondescript bag, the kind of bag that a cleaning lady might carry, the kind that no one would look at twice. I added my legal documents, my passport, my birth certificate, the trust fund papers, the deeds to properties that were in my name alone. I added my laptop, which contained copies of everything, the evidence, the recordings, the financial records. I added a change of clothes. By 6 o'clock, the bag was packed. I set it by the front door, where it would be easy to grab on my way out. Then I went back to the bedroom. I opened the jewelry box on the dresser, the one that Liu Yang had given me for our 5th anniversary, a large wooden box with a velvet lining. Inside were the pieces he had bought me over the years. A necklace, a bracelet, a pair of earrings, the engagement ring. All of them purchased with my money, through the corporate card, through the funds that should have been mine. I took them out. I laid them on the bed. The engagement ring caught the light to my mascaret diamond, set in platinum. The ring that Liu Yang had knelt down to give me on a rooftop in Paris, with the Eiffel Tower lit up behind him. I looked at it for a long time. I did not feel anything. No sadness, no nostalgia, no regret, just nothing. I put the ring back in the box. I left the box on the bed open, the jewelry displayed like a museum exhibit. Let him look at it and understand that I was leaving, that I was taking nothing he had given me, that his gifts meant less to me than the dust on the windowsill. I left the bedroom. I went to the nursery. The room was exactly as it had been, pale yellow walls. The rocking chair where Zhu Qin had sat and plotted. The tiny blue shoes were on the dresser where I had left them. I picked them up. They were so smaller than my palm, smaller than the length of my thumb. I thought about the baby who would wear them, the child growing inside me, the life that Zhu Qin had tried to extinguish. I put the shoes in my bag. They were coming with me. I looked around the nursery one last time. The mobile above the crib stuffed animals, turning slowly in the draft from the vent. The curtains white, sheer, filtering the morning light into something golden and soft, filled with picture books that I had bought, one by one, over the past for months. I had built this room with love. I had chosen every piece, every color, every detail. And Zhu Qin had used it as a common center, a place to make phone calls, to plan, to celebrate the downfall of the woman who had built it. I did not cry. I did not linger. I turned off the light and closed the door. At 7 o'clock, Zhu Qin appeared in the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe, her morning robe, as she called it, and her hair was in curlers. She was humming to herself a happy, tuneless sound, and when she saw me, she smiled. "Good morning, dear. Are you excited? Tonight's the night." "I'm excited, Mom," I said. I was making toast plain dry. The kind of breakfast that a pregnant woman with morning sickness might eat. I had been faking morning sickness for a week, retching into the toilet every morning while Zhu Qin stood outside the door, clucking sympathetically. "I just hope everything goes smoothly. You've planned everything perfectly. Now, sit down. You shouldn't be on your feet. I'll make the toast." She took the toaster from me. She fussed over me, patting my shoulder, adjusting my chair, bringing me a glass of water. She was the picture of maternal devotion, the kind of mother minus in minus law that other women envied, the kind that society magazines wrote about in their perfect family's features. I let her fuss. I smiled. I said, "Thank you, Mom. You're so good to me." And inside, I was counting the hours. At 9 o'clock, Liu Yang came downstairs. He was wearing a suit dark gray tailored, the kind of suit that he wore to important meetings. He was smiling, and his eyes were bright, and he kissed me on the cheek, not the lips, because he had learned over the past few weeks that I would turn my head if he tried to kiss me on the mouth. "Good morning, beautiful. You ready for tonight?" "Ready as I'll ever be," I said. I handed him his coffee black. No sugar, the way he liked it. "You look nice. Big meeting." "Just a few things at the office. I'll be home by 3 to get ready." He paused. He looked at me, and his expression softened the kind of softness that he used when he wanted something, the kind that had worked on me for years. Suhee, I want to say something. You've been amazing. Planning this party for Mom, taking care of everything, even when you've been feeling so unwell. I don't tell you enough how much I appreciate you. I felt a surge of nausea. Not from the pregnancy, from the sheer, unadulterated rot of the man standing in front of me telling me he appreciated me while his mistress was pregnant with his child, while his mother was poisoning my unborn baby, while he was stealing millions from my company. You're welcome, Yang, I said. My voice was soft, or the voice of a wife who believed her husband. Family is everything, right? Right, he said. He smiled. He drank his coffee. He had no idea. At 10 o'clock, I left the penthouse. I told Yu Kin I was going to the hotel to check on the final arrangements. The flowers, the seating, the audio minus visual setup. She waved me off, saying, "Go dear, I'll handle things here." I did not go straight to the hotel. I went to the bank first, a private vault in the basement of a building downtown, where I stored the things that mattered most. I deposited the jewelry, the documents, the backup drives. I left the bag in the vault. Everything except my phone, my wallet, and the burner phone that I would use for the final text. Then I went to the hotel. Claire, the event planner, was there. She met me in the lobby, her clipboard in hand, her expression the focused, slightly harried look of a woman who was running a major event and had no time for nonsense. "Everything is on schedule," she said, walking me toward the ballroom. "The caterers are setting up. The florists are here. The string quartet arrives at 4. The photographer is on standby. The projector and screen are installed. We tested them this morning. Everything works." "Good," I said. We walked into the ballroom. It was magnificent, high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, round tables covered in white tablecloths and set with china and crystal. The stage was at the front with the screen positioned behind it, large and white and waiting. The flowers white roses. Hundreds of them were being arranged in vases on the tables and in garlands along the stage. I walked to the stage. I stood in front of the screen. I turned and looked out at the ballroom at the 200 chairs that would soon be filled. At the tables that would soon be crowded with food and drink and conversation, at the doors through which Lu Yang and Zhu Qin would enter, smiling and triumphant, believing that this was their night. "Claire," I said, "I need to make a change to the program." She looked up from her clipboard. "What kind of change?" "The tribute video. I want to add a few more slides, and I want to control the playback myself. From the stage. I'll have a clicker. Can you set that up?" "Of course. But the video is already finalized." "I know. I have the updated version. I'll bring it. Just make sure the projector is connected to a laptop on the stage and that I have a clicker that works." She nodded. "Consider it done." I spent the next 2 hours going over every detail, the seating chart, the menu, the timeline. I made sure that the table for Lin Yu's parents was near the front where they would have a clear view of the screen. I made sure that Lu Yang's colleagues were seated together, where they could see each other's faces when the evidence was presented. I made sure that Yu Qin's golden ladies were at a table in the center of the room where they could not miss a single moment. At 1 o'clock, I left the hotel. I went to a cafe around the corner where I sat in a booth and datus in which and drank a glass of water. I was calm. I was in a way that I had not been in months, at peace. I thought about the years I had spent trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter minus law, the perfect woman. I thought about the dinners I had cooked, the parties I had hosted, the smiles I had faked, the tears I had hidden. I thought about the love I had given, freely and without reservation, to people who had never deserved it. And I thought about tonight. Tonight, all of that would end. Tonight, the masks would come off. Tonight, the truth would be told. I finished my sandwich. I paid the bill. I walked back to the hotel. The clock was ticking, and the guests would start arriving in 3 hours. The first guest arrived at 6:40 minus 5. He was an older man, silver minus haired, distinguished, wearing a tuxedo that had clearly been tailored for him decades ago and had never gone out of style. He was the CEO of a manufacturing company, a man who had been on the board of Suhi Corp for 20 years, a man who had known my father. He shook my hand at the door, kissed my cheek, and said, "Suhi, you look radiant. Your father would be proud." I smiled. I thanked him. I directed him to his table. The guests came in a steady stream after that. Couples in evening wear, women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos and dark suits. There were businessmen and socialites, lawyers and doctors, old, money and new. There were people I had known for years and people I had never met. There were people who liked me and people who tolerated me and people who envied me. All of them were here for Zhu Qin. All of them believed they were here to celebrate a milestone birthday, to honor a beloved matriarch, to raise a glass to 60 years of a life well minus lived. They had no idea what was coming. I stood at the entrance, greeting each guest with a smile and a handshake. I was wearing the black dress. Simple, elegant, understated. My hair was pulled back. My makeup was minimal. I looked, I thought, like a woman who was at peace, calm, serene, in control. At 7:15, Lin Yu's parents arrived. They were a modest couple, he in a dark suit that was slightly too big, she in a simple blue dress that she had clearly worn to other formal occasions. They looked out of place, nervous, overwhelmed, surrounded by wealth and opulence that they had never experienced. They approached me hesitantly. And the man said, "We're here for the birthday party. We're Lin Yu's parents." I said. I smiled warmly. "It's so nice to meet you. Lin Yu has told me so much about you," which was a lie, of course. Lin Yu had never mentioned her parents to me. But I wanted them to feel welcome. I wanted them to feel comfortable. I wanted them to be in their seats when the video started. I directed them to their table near the front, with a clear view of the stage. They sat down, looking around at the other guests, at the chandeliers, at the flowers. The woman leaned over to her husband and said something. And he nodded, and they both looked slightly odd. I felt a twinge of something, not guilt. Exactly, but something close to it. These were decent people. They had raised a daughter, loved her, believed in her. They had no idea what she had become. And tonight, they would find out in front of 200 strangers, in the most public and humiliating way possible. But then I thought about my baby, about the lab report, about the words "nature will take its course." And the twinge disappeared. At 7:30, the guest of honor arrived. Zhu Qin made an entrance. She was wearing a reed gown, floor minus length silk, with a beaded bodice and a slit up the leg that was slightly inappropriate for a woman of 60, but that she carried with the confidence of a woman half her age. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, held in place with a diamond hairpin. Her jewelry was real diamond earrings, a diamond necklace, a ring on her right hand that was large enough to be seen from across the room. She was wearing makeup heavy, artful, a ring on her, the kind that took hours to apply and that made her look 10 years younger. She was, by any measure, stunning, and she knew it. She walked into the ballroom on Lu Yang's arm, and the room turned to look. She smiled, warm, radiant, the smile of a woman who was the center of attention and who loved every second of it. She waved, she blew kisses, she paused to hug friends and admirers. Lu Yang was beside her, wearing a tuxedo, his arm linked through hers, his smile proud and possessive. He looked like the devoted son, the successful businessman, the man who had everything. He had no idea that by the end of the night he would have nothing. They made their way to the front of the room, to the head table where Zhu Qin would sit in the seat of honor. Along the way, Zhu Qin stopped to greet her golden ladies, clustered around a table in the center of the room, wearing their best gowns and their most judgmental expressions. They kissed Zhu Qin's cheeks. They admired her gown. They whispered to each other, and Zhu Qin laughed, and for a moment, she looked like the happiest woman in the world. I watched her from the entrance. I watched her smile, her laugh, her triumphant little wave. I thought about the woman in the nursery holding the blue shoes, talking about nature taking its course. I thought about the woman who had burned poison in my bedroom every night for 2 months. I thought about the woman who had called me a walking ATM in a group chat with her friends. And I thought, smile. Zhu Qin. Smile while you can. At 7:40-5, the string quartet started playing. It was a classical piece, Bach, I think, something gentle and elegant. The guests took their seats. The waiter started circulating with champagne. The room hummed with conversation and laughter and the clink of glasses. At 8 o'clock, I walked to the stage. The room did not go silent immediately. People were still talking, still drinking. I stood behind the podium and I waited. I looked out at the crowd, at the 200 faces, the 200 lives that were about to be changed by what I was about to do. I picked up a silver spoon. I tapped it against a crystal glass. The sound was clear, sharp, cutting through the noise of the room like a knife. The conversation died. The laughter stopped. The room went silent. 200 faces turned toward me. I smiled. It was a warm, gentle smile, the hostess welcoming her guests. I leaned into the microphone. Good evening, everyone, I said. My voice was clear, steady, carrying through the ballroom without effort. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here to celebrate a very special occasion. The 60th birthday of a woman who defines devotion. A woman who has spent her life putting family first. A woman who is, to me, more than a Mother Midas in Midas Law. She is family. Polite applause rippled through the room. Zhu Qin, seated at the head table, smiled and waved undabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Lu Yang sat beside her, beaming with pride. For the past 7 years, I continued, Mom has been a constant presence in our home. She has been there through the good times and the bad. She has offered advice, comfort, and support. She has been, in every sense of the word, a mother to me. Shu Qin was openly crying now. Happy tears, grateful tears, the tears of a woman who believed she was being honored. Tane, I said, I want to show you the side of Mom that you may not have seen. The side that works tirelessly behind the scenes. The side that makes this family what it is. I've put together a tribute editorial celebrating 60 years of motherhood and integrity. I hope you'll watch it with me. I gestured toward the screen. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The projector hummed to life. The screen went white. And then the first slide appeared. It was not a childhood photo. It was not a family portrait. It was not a picture of Zhu Qin at a wedding, or a birthday party. It was a bank statement. The numbers were large, bold, impossible to miss. A transfer of $4.2 million from Su He Corp operating account to You Consulting, a shell company registered in the name of Lin Yu, authorized by a forged signature. Lu Yang's signature on a document that I had never signed. The room gasped. It was not a quiet gasp. It was a collective, involuntary sound, the sound of 200 people realizing, in the same instant, that this was not a birthday tribute. That something was very, very wrong. Lu Yang stood up. His face was ashen white, drained of color, the face of a man who had just seen his life flash before his eyes. Su-hee, he shouted, turn it off, wrong file. That's not. I did not move. I stood behind the podium, my hands folded in front of me, my expression calm. I looked at Lu Yang. I did not say anything. The next slide appeared. It was a photograph. Zhu Qin at the obstetrics clinic holding Lin Yu's arm, guiding her through the door. The timestamp was clear. The clinic's name was visible in the background, and Zhu Qin's expression, proud, maternal, beaming, was impossible to misinterpret. The room went silent, and then the audio started. It was the recording from the nursery. Zhu Qin's voice, clear and sharp, filling the ballroom through the speakers. Don't worry, Lin Yu. She has a board meeting tomorrow. Lu Yang will pick you up at 2. I'll have the guest room ready. You're the one carrying the true heir to the Lu family, not that workaholic machine. A younger voice responded shrill. Hi, unmistakable but auntie. What if Su he finds out about the inheritance? My lawyer says if she miscarries, the trust fund from her father stays with Lu Yang. Zhu Qin laughed. The sound was cold, dry, echoing through the silent ballroom. Miscarry? Why do you think I give her that calming incense every night? A little more stress, a little accidental fall. Nature will take its course. Once she's out of the picture, you and your baby are coming home. The recording ended. The ballroom was silent. Completely, utterly silent. The kind of silence that follows a catastrophe. The silence of people who have just heard something that they cannot unhear, something that has changed everything. Zhu Qin was sitting at the head table, her mouth open, her face white. She looked like a statue frozen, motionless, her eyes wide with terror. The happy tears were still on her cheeks, but they had turned to something else, something that looked like fear. Lu Yang was standing, his hands clenched at his sides, his face a mask of rage and panic. He looked at me. His eyes were wild. And I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of a woman who had waited 7 years for this moment, who had planned every detail, who had endured every insult and every betrayal and every lie, and who was now, finally, getting her revenge. Let's continue, I said, and the next slide appeared. The surveillance footage played on the screen. It was the footage from the hidden cameras in the penthouse clean. High minus definition, time-stamped it, impossible to deny. The first clip showed Zhu Qin leading Lin Yu through the front door, both of them carrying shopping bags. Zhu Qin was saying something, gesturing toward the living room, and Lin Yu was nodding, her eyes wide with admiration. The room watched, no one spoke. The next clip was the bedroom. Lin Yu lying on my bed, wearing my cream minus colored silk robe, holding a glass of my Bordeaux. Zhu Qin was standing beside the bed, holding up my black cocktail dress, and Lin Yu was reaching for it. The timestamp on the footage was from 3 weeks earlier, Tuesday, at 2 in the afternoon. When I was in a board meeting, I saw several of the golden ladies put their hands over their mouths. I saw one of them, Margaret, the woman who had been Zhu Qin's closest friend for 20 years, turned pale. The next clip was the bathroom. Lin Yu, standing in front of my vanity, trying on my jewelry. She put on my engagement ring. She held her hand up, admiring it, turning it this way and that. She smiled a small, satisfied smile, the smile of a woman who believed that the ring would soon be hers in truth. I looked at Lu Yang. He was still standing, Maga was still standing, but his legs seemed to be giving out. He sat down, heavily, in his chair. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. The next clip was the living room. Lu Yang and Lin Yu, on the sofa, kissing. Lin Yu's hand in his hair, Lu Yang's hand on her waist. The angle was such that you could see everything: the way he held her, the way she leaned into him, the way they kissed like they had done it 100 times before. The timestamp was from 2 months earlier, an evening when Lu Yang had told me he was working late. I heard a woman in the audience gasp. I heard a man say, "Jesus Christ." I heard the sound of a glass being set down hard on a table. The footage ended. The screen went dark for a moment, and then the medical records appeared. They were Lin Yu's prenatal records. 6 months of visits, ultrasounds, blood tests, all paid for with my VIP medical card, all signed by grandmother Zhu Qin. The records were clear, clinical, and damning. They showed that Lin Yu was 6 months pregnant, that the father was listed as unknown, a lie, of course, but a lie that Zhu Qin had helped maintain. That every appointment had been attended by Zhu Qin, who had signed every form, paid every bill, and held Lin Yu's hand through every ultrasound. The records were followed by the lab report, the toxicology analysis of the sandalwood incense, the list of ingredients, mugwort, safflower, tansy, the clinical description, known to stimulate uterine contractions. Prolonged exposure in pregnant women may induce miscarriage. The note at the bottom: sample provided by Suhi. Incense burned in bedroom nightly for approximately 2 months. I saw Zhu Qin flinch. She was sitting at the head table, her hands gripping the edge of the table so hard that her knuckles were white. Her face was no longer white, it was red, a deep, furious red. The red of a woman who had been cottoned, who was about to explode. The final slide was the group chat. The screenshots were large, clear, projected onto the screen for the entire room to see. Zhu Qin's messages, in Chinese, with English translations beneath them. Ben. Su, he is just a walking ATM. Once the brat is born, we'll kick her to the curb. My real daughter minus in minus law is much more obedient. Nature will take its course. The baby won't survive the stress. Then everything goes to Lu Yang. The room erupted. It was not a quiet reaction. It was not a murmur of disapproval. It was an explosion. Shouts, gasps, exclamations, the sound of 200 people reacting to something that they could not believe. People stood up. People pointed. People turned to each other, their eyes wide, their mouths open. The golden ladies were in a state of near-minus hysteria. Some of them were crying. Some were whispering furiously. One of them, Margaret, stood up, threw her napkin on the table, and walked out. Zhu Qin stood up. She was screaming, not talking, not explaining, not defending herself. Screaming, rah, rah. Animal sound that cut through the noise of the room. You bitch, she screamed, pointing at me. You lying bitch, you've ruined me. You've ruined everything. The room went silent again. Everyone turned to look at Zhu Qin, at the woman in the red gown, her hair coming loose, her makeup running, her face twisted with rage. She was no longer the elegant matriarch. She was no longer the devoted mother minus in minus law. She was a woman unhinged, a woman who had been exposed, who had been humiliated, who had lost everything in the space of 10 minutes, and who had no idea how to cope with it. I did not flinch. I did not look away. I leaned into the microphone. No, Mom, I said. My voice was calm, steady, carrying through the silent ballroom. You ruined yourself. I just provided the screen. The words hung in the air. Zhu Qin stared at me, her mouth open, her eyes blazing, and then the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Everyone turned. A woman walked in. She was wearing a white dress, so simple, elegant, the kind of dress that a woman might wear to a party where she expected to be the center of attention. Her hair was styled. Her makeup was perfect. She was visibly pregnant, 6 months, maybe. Her belly rounded and prominent beneath the white fabric. It was Lin Yu. She had come, just as I knew she would. She had come because I had told her to, because I had sent her the text, because I had stroked her vanity, because I had made her believe that this was her night, that she would be welcomed, that she would take her place. She walked into the ballroom, smiling, looking for Lu Yang. And then she saw the screen. The group chat was still projected Zhu Qin's messages. The English translations, the words mocking ATM and kick her to the curb, and nature will take its course. Lin Yu stopped. Her smile faded. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the head table. She saw Lu Yang sitting in his chair, his face gray, his hands shaking. She saw Zhu Qin standing, her face twisted with rage. She saw the 200 guests all staring at her. And then she saw her parents. They were sitting at their table near the front, their faces white, their eyes filled with horror. Her mother was crying, shaking sobs, her hand over her mouth. Her father was staring at Lin Yu, at her pregnant belly, at the white dress, and his expression was one of complete and utter devastation. Lin Yu's mouth opened. She tried to say something, anything, but no words came out. She took a step backward, then another. Her hand went to her belly, protective, instinctive. And then she saw the police. They were standing at the back of the room, near the doors. Detective Sarah Lin, in a plainclothes suit, and 2 uniformed officers. They had been there for 10 minutes, watching. They had seen the evidence. They had heard the recording. They had watched Zhu Qin's outburst, and now they were moving. Detective Lin walked toward the head table. She walked past Lin Yu, who was still standing in the aisle. Frozen, her hand on her belly end, she approached Lu Yang. Lu Yang? Her voice was professional, calm, the voice of a woman who had done this 100 times. I'm Detective Sarah Lin with the Financial Crimes Unit. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Lu Yang stood up. He was shaking. His face was a mask of panic. This is a mistake. She's lying. This is all a misunderstanding. Sir, Detective Lin said. Please turn around and put your hands behind your back. He did not move. He looked at me. His eyes were pleading, desperate, begging. The eyes of a man who had just realized that he had lost and who was hoping, against all reason, that I would show mercy. I did not. I looked at him, and I said nothing. I just stood there. Behind the podium, my hands folded, my expression calm. One of the uniformed officers stepped forward. He took Lu Yang's arm, turned him around, and handcuffed him. The click of the cuffs was loud in the silent ballroom. Shu Qin screamed. No, you can't. He's my son. You can't take him. She lunged toward Lu Yang, but Detective Lin stepped between them. Detective Lin said, I also have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit bodily harm on attempted FET. I sighed. Please, turn around. Shu Kai did not turn around. She swung. Her head connected with Detective Lin's cheek, a hard, open-handed slap that echoed through the ballroom. Detective Lin did not flinch. She did not react. She simply said, That's assaulting an officer. That's another charge. The uniformed officer moved. He took Shu Kan's arms, turned her around, and handcuffed her. She was screaming wordless. Animal sounds, the screams of a woman who had lost everything and who could not believe it was happening. They lead them out Lu Yang, in his tuxedo, his head down, and Zhu Qin in her red gown, her hair coming loose, her makeup running, screaming the whole way. They walked down the aisle, past the 200 guests, past Lin Yu, who was still standing frozen, her hand on her belly, and out the doors. The ballroom was silent. I stood behind the podium. I looked out at the crowd, at the 200 faces, the 200 witnesses. I saw shock. I saw horror. I saw pity. I saw admiration. I saw a dozen different emotions, all mixed together, all reflected in the faces of the people who had come to celebrate a birthday and had instead witnessed a public execution. I leaned into the microphone. Thank you all for coming, I said. My voice was steady. The banquet is over. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. I stepped away from the podium. I walked off the stage, and I did not look back. The fallout was spectacular. I left the hotel at 9:30, an hour after the arrests. I walked out through the service entrance, where a car was waiting for me. David's car, sent to take me to the safe house that he had arranged. A small apartment in a neighborhood where no one would think to look for me. I did not go back to the penthouse. I never went back. The news broke that night. By 10 o'clock, the story was on every gossip website, every news feed, every social media platform. Socialite arrested at own birthday party, read the headlines. Husband embezzled millions from wife's company. Mother minus in minus law, poisoned pregnant daughter minus in minus law. The photos were everywhere. Zhu Kai in her red gown, being led out in handcuffs, Lu Yang in his tuxedo, his head down the screen with the bank statement. the group chat, the medical records. The story went viral. By morning, it was the #1 trending topic on every platform. People were talking about it at water coolers, in coffee shops, on morning talk shows. The 60th birthday massacre, as the internet dubbed it, became a cultural moment. A story of betrayal and revenge that people could not stop talking about. I did not read any of it. David had advised me to stay off social media, to avoid the news, to focus on myself and the baby. I took his advice. I spent the first 3 days in the safe house, a small, sunlit apartment with a view of a park, sleeping, reading, and talking to my therapist, a woman named Dr. Chen, who specialized in trauma and who helped me process what had happened. The legal proceedings moved quickly. David filed the divorce petition the day after the banquet. He filed the emergency motion to freeze the trust income. He filed the civil suit to recover the $4.2 million. He filed the criminal complaints against Lu Yang for embezzlement and fraud, against Ju Qin for conspiracy to commit bodily harm and attempted feticide, against Ling Yu for conspiracy and receiving stolen property. The courts moved with unusual speed. The evidence was overwhelming: the photos, the financial records, the lab report, the audio recording, the group chat screenshots, the surveillance footage. There was no room for denial. There was no room for doubt. The only question was how long the sentences would be. Lu Yang was the first to break. He was in custody, held without bail, flight risk, the judge said, given the amount of money involved and his connections overseas. His lawyer, a public defender, because without my father's trust fund to pay for counsel, Lu Yang could not afford a private attorney, came to me with a proposal. He wants to make a deal, the lawyer said. We were meeting in a conference room at the courthouse, a small windowless room with a scarred table and uncomfortable chairs. He'll plead guilty to all charges. He'll cooperate with the prosecution. He'll testify against Yu Qin and Lin Yu. In exchange, he wants a reduced sentence. And he wants you to drop the civil suit. I looked at the lawyer. He was a tired, minus-looking man in his 50s, with a rumpled suit and a coffee stain on his tie. He was doing his best for his client. I looked at the client, but I could see in his eyes that he knew the case was hopeless. No deal, I said. Soon. He stole from me. He conspired to harm my child. He cheated on me with a woman who was living in my house. He does not get to negotiate. He does not get to reduce his sentence by testifying against the people he conspired with. He gets what he deserves. The lawyer nodded. He did not argue. He stood up, shook my hand, and left. Lu Yang went to trial 3 months later. It was a short trial. The evidence was so overwhelming that the defense had no real case. Lu Yang did not testify. His lawyer called no witnesses. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and found him guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison. I was not in the courtroom for the sentencing. David went in my place. He called me afterward, and his voice was quiet. 12 years, he said. With good behavior, he could be out in 8. But the civil suit is moving forward. The court has ordered the liquidation of all his assets: the cars, the investments. The proceeds will go to repay Suhi Corp. He'll have nothing when he gets out. Good, I said. I meant it. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. A quiet, empty nothingness, like the silence after a storm has passed. The kind of nothingness that comes when you have spent months planning a revenge, and you have executed it perfectly, and you have won, and then you realize that winning does not bring back what was lost. Xu Qin's trial came next. She was a different defendant from Lu Yang. Where Lu Yang had been quiet, resigned, defeated, Xu Qin was defiant. She fired her public defender and hired a private attorney paid for, the court discovered, by money that she had hidden in a secret bank account, money that she had been siphoning from the household accounts for years. The attorney was a flashy, aggressive man who specialized in high-profile cases and who seemed to believe that he could win by sheer force of personality. He could not. The evidence against Zhu Kaoing was even more damning than the evidence against Lu Yang. The audio recording her voice, clear as day, talking about nature taking its course and, once she's out of the picture, the lab report the toxic incense, the mugwort safflower and tansy. The medical records Lin Yu's prenatal visits, signed by grandmother Zhu Qin. The group chat her messages, her words, her plans. The surveillance footage, her leading Lin Yu into my house, her holding up my dress, her filming Lu Yang and Lin Yu on my sofa. Xu Qin testified in her own defense. It was a disaster. She took the stand, and she was arrogant. She was condescending. She spoke about me as if I were a thing, an object, a possession, a walking ATM that had somehow developed opinions. She was never a real wife, Zhu Qin said under oath. She was married to her company. She didn't have time for my son. She didn't have time for a family. Lin Yu was better. Lin Yu was obedient. Lin Yu knew her place. The courtroom was silent. The jury stared at her. The judge stared at her. Even her own lawyer looked uncomfortable. And the incense, the prosecutor asked. The mugwort, the safflower, the tansy. You burned it in her bedroom every night for 2 months. You knew it could induce a miscarriage. Why? Zhu Qin smiled. It was a cold, dry smile, the same smile I had heard in the nursery recording. It was traditional medicine. My mother used it. Her mother used it. It's not poison. It serves. If she was too weak to carry a child, that's not my fault. Nature takes its course. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. The jury looked horrified. Xu Qin was found guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit bodily harm, attempted feticide, assaulting a police officer, and obstruction of justice. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison. She screamed when she heard the sentence. She screamed and cursed and threatened, and the bailiffs had to restrain her. She called the judge a fool. She called the prosecutor a liar. She called me a whore. And then she was led away, still screaming, her red gown replaced by a prison jumpsuit, her diamond hairpin replaced by nothing. I was not in the courtroom for her sentencing either. I was at home with my baby. Lin Yu's case was the most complicated. She had been arrested at the banquet. Detective Lin had taken her into custody after Lu Yang and Zhu Qin were laid away. She had been charged with conspiracy, receiving stolen property, and money laundering. Her parents had disowned her. They had left the banquet in tears, and they had not spoken to her since. She had no money, no family, no support. She was 6 months pregnant, alone, and facing prison. She pled guilty. There was no trial. she stood in court, her hand on her belly, and she told the judge that she was sorry. She said that Liu Yang had manipulated her, that Qian had manipulated her, that she had been young, unfoolish, and in love, and that she had believed their promises. The judge did not buy it entirely, but he was lenient. He sentenced her to 3 years of probation, no prison time. Given her pregnancy and her cooperation with the prosecution, she was ordered to pay restitution, the $4.2 million, which she would be paying off for the rest of her life. She was ordered to have no contact with Liu Yang or Qian. And she was ordered to undergo psychological counseling. She had the baby 2 months later. A boy, healthy, 7 pounds, born in a hospital while she was still on probation. She named him Lucas. I did not go to see him. I did not send a gift. I did not reach out. Some people told me I should, that the baby was innocent, that I should help, that I should be the bigger person. I did not. The baby was innocent, yes, but his mother had conspired to kill mine. His grandmother had burned poison in my bedroom. His father had stolen from me, untreated me like a possession. I owed them nothing. I owed my own baby everything. And that was where my focus was. 6 months after the banquet, I moved into a new home. It was smaller than the penthouse, a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, with a small garden and a view of the river. It was not $30 million. It was not on the 40-second floor of a glassed tower. It did not have a marble foyer or a crystal chandelier or a smart home system that could be hacked by a mother in law with a grudge. But it had sunlight. Every morning, the sun came through the bedroom window and woke me up. Every afternoon, it filled the living room with golden light. Every evening, it sat over the river, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. There was no sandalwood incense. There were no hidden cameras. There were no spies. There was just me and my baby and the quiet, ordinary happiness of a life that was finally my own. My daughter was born in the spring, a healthy, screaming, beautiful girl. 7 pounds 2 ounces, with my father's eyes and my mother's nose. I named her Wen after my father. She was the best thing that had ever happened to me, the reason I had fought, the reason I had endured, the reason I had planned revenge that had destroyed 3 lives and rebuilt mine. I held her for the first time in the delivery room and I cried, not from pain, not from exhaustion, from the overwhelming, all-consuming joy of holding my child in my arms, of knowing that she was safe, that she was healthy, that she was mine. The doctors and nurses smiled. They had seen it 100 times. The tears of a new mother, but they did not know what I had been through. They did not know that this baby had survived poison and betrayal and a conspiracy that had aimed to end her life before it began. They did not know that her first breath was a victory. I knew. The first few months were hard. I was a single mother, living alone, running a company, recovering from a divorce and a trauma. There were nights when Wen cried for hours and I did not know what to do. There were days when I was so tired that I could barely function. There were moments when I missed the penthouse, the help, the life I had before, moments when I wondered if I had done the right thing, if the revenge had been worth it, if I would ever be happy again. But then Wen would smile, a real smile, not just gas, the kind of smile that lit up her whole face, and I would remember. I would remember the incense. I would remember the recording. I would remember the words, nature will take its course. And I would know that I had done the right thing, that I had protected my child, that I had given her a life free from the people who had wanted to harm her. I went back to work 6 weeks after the delivery. Suhi Corp was doing well, the merger had gone through. The company was growing, the board was supportive. I had a new office office with a view of the river. Smaller than my old office, but brighter, warmer. I brought Wen to work with me sometimes, in a carrier, and my colleagues cooed over her and brought her gifts and told me she was the most beautiful baby they had ever seen. I was happy, not the kind of happy that I had been before, the naive, trusting happy, the happy that comes from believing that the world is good and that people are who they say they are. This was a different kind of happy, harder, deeper, more earned happy. The happy that comes from surviving, from rebuilding, from taking back your life and making it yours. I learned to cook. Not the elaborate dinner minus party cooking that I had done in the penthouse, when I was trying to impress Lu Yang's colleagues and Zhu Qin's friends, but simple, honest cooking, soups and stews and roasted vegetables on fresh bread. I learned to bake, and I found that there was something meditative about kneading dough, about the feel of flour on my hands, about the smell of bread filling the house. I planted a garden in the backyard, tomatoes and basil and lavender and roses, and I found that there was something healing about putting my hands in the dirt, about watching things grow, about nurturing life instead of fearing its destruction. I reconnected with old friends. There was Sarah, my college roommate, who had moved to the West Coast and whom I had not spoken to in years. We had drifted apart after my marriage, as friends sometimes do, but when I called her after the banquet, she had cried and said, "I knew something was wrong. I knew he wasn't good enough for you." She flew out to visit me, and we spent a week talking and laughing and crying, and it was as if no time had passed. There was Michael, my father's old business partner, who had retired to Florida, but who still called me every Sunday to check in, to ask about Wen, to tell me stories about my father that I had never heard. There was Linda, who had been with me for 5 years and who had stayed by my side through everything, who had covered for me when I was meeting with Chen Wei, who had kept the office running when I was in court, who had brought me soup when I was pregnant and alone. These were my people. These were my family. Not the people who had shared my blood or my marriage certificate, but the people who had chosen me, who had stood by me, who had loved me without condition. I did not date. I did not look for a new relationship. I was not interested. I had Wen, and I had my work, and I had my friends, a small, loyal group of people who had stood by me through everything, who had not believed the lies, who had not abandoned me when the story broke. That was enough. More than enough. I saw a therapist once a week. Chen helped me process the trauma, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the slow, deliberate poisoning of my trust and my home. She helped me understand that what had happened to me was not my fault, that I had not been stupid, that I had been a woman who loved her husband and trusted her other minus in minus law, and that they had exploited that love and trust for their own gain. She also helped me understand the revenge, that it had been necessary not just for justice, but for my own healing, that I had needed to take back control, to confront the people who had hurt me, to show them and the world that I was not a victim, that the banquet had been a form of self-defense, a way to protect myself and my child from people who would have destroyed us if I had not acted first. Some people asked if I regretted it. They asked if I regretted the public spectacle, the humiliation, the destruction of 3 lives, They asked if I could have done it differently, quietly, privately. They asked if the revenge had been too much, too harsh, too cruel. I always gave the same answer. No, I said. I don't regret it. They tried to kill my baby. They stole from me. They cheated on me. They lived in my house and wore my clothes, unspent my money, and called me a walking ATM behind my back. They would have done worse if I had not stopped them. I gave them exactly what they deserved. And I would do it again. The people who asked usually nodded. They usually said they understood. Some of them did not. But it did not matter. I did not need their approval. I did not need their understanding. I had my daughter and my work and my work and my life, and that was enough. The newspaper clipping came in the mail one Tuesday, sent by a friend, with a note that said, "Thought you'd want to see this." It was a small article in the legal section, buried on page 4, with a headline that read, "Former socialite Jew can sentenced to 8 years. Liu Yang assets liquidated to repay Suhi Corp." I read the article. It was brief, factual, without emotion. It listed the charges, the sentences. It mentioned that Ju Kin had been transferred to a women's correctional facility upstate. It mentioned Liu Yang had been moved to a medium-security prison. It mentioned that Lin Yu was on probation and working at a grocery store to pay restitution. I set the clipping down. I looked at Wen, who was lying on a blanket on the floor, kicking her legs and gurgling at a mobile above her head. She was healthy. She was safe. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. I picked up the phone. "Suhi, I'm living in a basement. I have nothing. Mom is sick in the prison infirmary. Help us." It was Liu Yang. I stared at the message. I did not feel anger. I did not feel sadness. I did not feel triumph. I felt nothing, a quiet, empty nothingness, like the silence after a storm has passed. The kind of nothingness that comes when you have closed a door and you know with absolute certainty that you will never open it again. I deleted the message. I blocked the number. I set the phone down. I picked up Wen. I held her against my chest, and I felt her small, warm body against mine. And I smelled her baby shampoo and her soft skin, and I thought, this is what matters. This is what I fought for. This is my life. And it was just beginning. A year after the banquet, I stood at the window of my new home, holding Wen in my arms, and I watched the sun set over the river. Wen was a year old now, walking, talking, laughing, a bright, curious child who loved music and dogs and the feel of grass between her toes. She had my father's eyes, dark, intelligent, observant, and she had a smile that could light up a room. She was, in every way, the best thing that had ever happened to me. I held her against my chest, and I thought about the year that had passed, the trials, the sentences, the divorce finalized 6 months after the banquet, with the court awarding me full custody of Wen under division of assets that left Liu Yang with nothing. The civil suit won, with the court ordering Liu Yang on Lin Yu to repay the full $4.2 million, plus interest and legal fees. The new home, the new life. I thought about Ju Coin. She was in prison, serving her 8-year sentence. She had been in the infirmary twice, once for a respiratory infection, once for a fall that had broken her wrist. She had no visitors. Her golden ladies had abandoned her. Her husband, Lu Jian, had filed for divorce and moved to the countryside. where he lived quietly and spoke to no one about what had happened. Shukain was alone. She had gotten exactly what she had deserved. I thought about Liu Yang. He was in prison, serving his 12-year sentence. He had lost weight. He had lost the confident, handsome demeanor that had once made people like him. He was a number now. A prisoner ID, a cell, a schedule. He had no money. He had no money. No status, no future. He had gotten exactly what he had deserved. I thought about Lin Yu. She was on probation, working at a grocery store, living in a small apartment with her son. She had no family. Her parents had disowned her, and they had not spoken to her since the banquet. She had no friends. Most of her friends had abandoned her when the story broke. She had no money. She was paying restitution, and she would be paying it for the rest of her life. She was alone. She was alone with a child, and she had gotten exactly what she had deserved. I did not feel sorry for any of them. I had tried. I had asked myself more than once if I should feel something pity, compassion, forgiveness. I had read books about forgiveness, about letting go, about the healing power of mercy. I had talked to Drive Chen about it. She had told me that forgiveness was a choice, not an obligation, and that I did not owe it to anyone. She had told me that I could heal without forgiving, that I could move on without letting go of the truth. She was right. I had moved on. I had built a new life, a better life, a honest life, a life that was mine. I had a daughter who loved me. I had a company that thrived. I had friends who stood by me. I had a home filled with sunlight and laughter and the smell of baby shampoo and fresh bread. I had everything that mattered, and I had done it without forgiving the people who had tried to destroy me. Some people would call that cold. Some people would call that unchristian, unkind. They would say that I should forgive, that I should let go, that I should be the bigger person. But those people had not been through what I had been through. They had not been poisoned. They had not been betrayed. They had not watched their mother in minus law plot their unborn child's death on a hidden camera. They did not get to tell me how to feel. I felt what I felt was peace when stirred in my arms. She looked up at me, heard our eyes wide and curious, and she said, "Mama." I smiled. I kissed her forehead. "Yes, my love. Mama's here." She laid her head on my shoulder, and she went back to watching the sunset. The sky was orange and pink and purple, and the river was a ribbon of gold, and the world was quiet and beautiful and mine. I thought about my father. I thought about his warning. Never let anyone tell you they love you while their hands are in your purse. I thought about how I had laughed, how I had been so sure that Liu Yang was different. I thought about how wrong I had been, and how right my father had been, and how I wished he could have been here to see me now, to see his granddaughter, to see the life I had built, to know that I had learned his lesson. I thought about the spy in my house. Jukin had thought she was the spy, the one who watched, who reported, who controlled. She had thought she was playing a game and that I was the pawn. But she had been wrong. She had been the pawn. She had been the one who was watched, who was recorded, who was exposed. She had been the one who lost. A spy only works if the target doesn't know the game. I had known the game from day one. From the moment I saw the perfume on Liu Yang's collar, from the moment I smelled the incense, from the moment I felt the first dizzy spell, I had known. I had pretended to be oblivious. I had let them believe they were winning. And then, when the moment was right, I had struck. I was the only one who had finished the game. The sun dipped. below the horizon. The sky turned from orange to pink to purple to blue. The first stars appeared. Wen was asleep in my arms, her breath warm and steady against my neck. I carried her to her room, a small, bright room with yellow walls and a white crib and a mobile above the bed. I laid her down. I covered her with a blanket. I kissed her forehead. "Sleep well, my love." I whispered, "Mama's here. Nothing will ever hurt you." I turned off the light. I closed the door. I walked back to the living room, where the window was still open and the night air was cool and fresh. I stood there for a moment. I closed the door, looking out at the river, at the stars, at the quiet, beautiful world that was mine. The game was over. My life was just beginning. And I was, at last, free. Minus epilogue. 3 years later, I sat in the garden of my home, watching Wen play with a dog, a golden retriever puppy that I had got on her for her 3rd birthday. She was laughing, running, throwing a ball, and the dog was chasing it, barking, his tail wagging like a metronome. The sun was warm. The flowers were blooming. The river was a ribbon of blue in the distance. My phone rang. It was David. "Suhee," he said. "I thought you'd want to know. Liu Yang was released early. Good behavior. He got out last week." I was quiet for a moment. "Where is he?" "Nobody knows. He left the prison with nothing, no money, no ID, no contacts. He's probably homeless. His father died last year, remember? No family left. No friends. Just nothing." I nodded, even though he could not see me. "Enjukin. She has 2 years left. She's been in and out of the infirmary. Her health is declining. The doctors say she might not make it to release." I was quiet again. Linyu, still on probation, still paying restitution. She got a job at a daycare, ironic. I know, her son is 3 now. He's in the same daycare where she works. She's managing, barely. I looked at Wen, who was now sitting on the grass, hugging the puppy, laughing as he licked her face. She was happy. She was healthy. She was safe. "Thank you for telling me." "David," I said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. More than fine." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of betrayal, a lot of revenge. But I've never seen anyone handle it the way you did. You didn't just win. You rebuilt. You didn't let them destroy you. You used what they did to you to build something better. That's remarkable." I smiled. "Thank you, David. But I didn't do it alone. You helped. Dr. Fen. Chen helped. My friends helped. And when she was the reason I fought. She was the reason I didn't give up. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her." We said goodbye. I hung up. I set the phone down. I watched Wen play with the dog. And I thought about the years that had passed, the pain, the fear, the anger, the revenge, the healing, the rebuilding. I thought about the woman I had been before. The naive, trusting woman who had believed in love and family and the goodness of people. I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, or wiser, but still capable of love, still capable of joy, still capable of building a life that was worth living. I had not become bitter. I had not become cold. I had become careful. I had learned to trust my instincts, to see the signs, to protect myself and my child. I had learned that love was not enough, that it had to be earned, that it had to be reciprocated, that it had to be built on honesty and respect. I had learned that family was not just blood. that it was the people who chose you, who stood by you, who loved you without condition. And I had learned that revenge, when it was just, when it was legal, when it was necessary, could be a form of healing. Not the only form, not the best form, but a form, a way to take back control, a way to say, you will not hurt me. You will not hurt my child. You will not get away with it. When ran to me, the puppy at her heels. She threw herself into my lap, and she hugged me, and she said, Mama, I love you. I hugged her back. I kissed her hair. I smelled her shampoo and her sunshine and her sweet 3-year-old smell. I love you too. My darling, I said. More than anything in the world. She pulled back. She looked at me with my father's eyes, dark, intelligent, observant, and she said, Mama, why did you and Daddy get divorced? I was quiet for a moment. It was the first time she had asked. She was 3. She did not remember Lu Yang. She did not know him. She had seen photos, but she did not connect the man in the photos with the word daddy. I took a breath. I chose my words carefully. Because your daddy and I were not happy together, I said. Because sometimes two people love each other, but they are not good for each other. And when that happens, it's better to say goodbye than to stay and be unhappy. She considered this. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Are you happy now, Mama? I smiled. I looked around the garden, the flowers, the sunshine, the river, the puppy, my daughter in my lap. I thought about my life, the company, the friends, the home, the freedom, the future. Yes, I said. I'm very happy. Good, she said. She hugged me again. I want you to be happy. I held her. I closed my eyes. I felt the sun on my face, the grass beneath my legs, the warm weight of my daughter in my arms. I felt the quiet, deep, earned happiness of a woman who had survived, who had rebuilt, who had taken back her life and made it hers. Somewhere, in a prison upstate, a woman was dying. Somewhere, in a city I did not know, a man was homeless. Somewhere, in a small apartment, a woman was paying restitution and raising a child alone. They were the consequences of their own choices. They were the endings of their own stories. But this was my story. And it was not ending. It was just beginning. I opened my eyes. I looked at the river, at the sky, at the world that stretched out before me. Bright, beautiful, infinite, mine. I was free. And I was never going back.